What's up everyone, it's Kelly and today I've got a stamping video for you. So today I wanted to do a giant comparison between my stamping nail polishes and my non-stamping nail polishes and see which performs better. If you're new to stamping or if you aren't familiar with what that is, I did just make a playlist of all of my stamping videos, including a nail polish 101 video, which basically explains everything you need to know about stamping. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, check that out first. But yeah, today I wanted to do a big comparison test. So I've got a bunch of brands of regular nail polish and I've got some dupes of the colors in stamping formulas, and I thought it would be really cool to do a little test for the non-stamping polishes. I tried to cover all my bases, so I have a lot of the mainstream ones. I've got OPI, Orly, Essie, China Glaze, Color Club, and then I've got a few indies as well. So yeah, let's just go through each one and see how they perform. So roll the stamping footage. So we're just gonna dive right in and go through the rainbow. On the left side of the screen is always going to be the regular lacquer nail polish, and then on the right side of the screen is going to be the stamping polish. So I'm starting off with red. We've got the Morgan Taylor Stilettos in the Snow, and then we've got for the stamping polish the stamped red from Picture Polish. So you can see they're incredibly similar colors. It's very hard to find a red nail polish that has a cream formula instead of a jelly formula, but that's what I wanted to use for this test, just to make sure that I was getting a nice opaque formula, because jelly polishes are probably not going to be the best for stamping. So I stamped it over a lighter color on both sides, and you can see there is very little difference here. They look super similar. If I'm looking incredibly closely, I think that the Morgan Taylor shade is just a little bit lighter, and the stamping polish has just a touch more sharpness around the edges. But honestly, looking at these side by side, if I hadn't labeled them in my video, I don't think I would have known which was which. So I'm very impressed with this. It's a good start. Also, just a quick note, this is just a little pat on the back, but I am very impressed with myself that I lined these stamps up almost exactly for both manicures. So just a cool little moment there. But yeah, so first experiment went very well. Over a lighter color, regular opaque nail polish looks like it works just as well as stamping polish. But here's where things start to get a little bit trickier, and that's when you're working with a lighter nail polish as your stamping polish. So in this case, I'm going to use Nirvana from Cirque as my regular polish, and then Fab Cab from What's Up Nails as my stamping polish. And you can actually see just in my swatches, they look like similar colors, but the Cirque one, you can almost see around the cuticles, there's like a little softness to it. And that's a way that I can usually identify that a polish is going to be less opaque. So that one actually takes 3 coats for full opacity, but yellow nail polishes in general tend to be 3/4 on me. So I figured it was a good one to try stamping, and I decided to do it over a dark base color. So we have this navy blue, and you can see a very stark difference here. My stamping isn't perfect. There's some little spots where I kind of missed, but overall, I feel like you can see definitely the stamping polish performs a lot better over a darker color. When you're working with a light shade, you need it to be really opaque, and I would say 99% of the time, a yellow polish is just not going to be opaque enough to work over a dark color. So in the case of yellow specifically, but probably a lot of lighter shades that need more coats for opacity, it's always going to be the stamping polish that works better. So now I wanted to move on into the more medium tones, so I decided to go with Monstera from Holo Taco as my regular polish, and then the other side from What's Up Nails as my stamping polish. And in the bottle, they actually looked almost dupes side by side, but once I applied them for my swatches, just to show you what the color looked like, I did notice that the Holo Taco shade does apply a lot darker on the nail, so that actually did affect this experiment a little bit, which you'll see in a second. I decided to apply them over a medium blue shade, so it's kind of the same depth of color with the blue and the green, and you can see there's a very stark difference between the two, but I think that's for a couple of reasons. One, the Holo Taco shade is a little bit darker, so it did still show up, but that's another important lesson. You really want to make sure that the two polishes that you're using have a sharp enough contrast that they're gonna work and actually look like a stamp over your nails, because from a distance, I feel like it would be very hard to tell that the Holo Taco shade is a stamped manicure. It might just look like it's one color, whereas the What's Up Nails stamping polish looks like it is 2 distinct colors. So now let's test over doing a stamp over a specialty finish. So I decided to go with this turquoise color. I've got China Glaze 2 Yacht to Handle as my regular polish, and then I've got MoYou London Kiss the Frog as my stamping polish. polish. And one thing you'll also notice, and one of the reasons why I wanted to do side-by-side swatches, is so that you can see in a lot of cases, a stamping polish is not going to apply as smoothly as a regular nail polish. You can see it's not as self-leveling, and that's just because they have a pretty different formula, but you can always fix that up with top coat if you do want to wear it as a full manicure, which honestly I don't usually recommend because stamping polishes tend to be more expensive than regular nail polishes. So in that case, I do think that it's easier to find a dupe in your collection or at the drugstore that has the same color but isn't a stamping polish. But anyway, I decided to stamp this over a gold polish, and I did see a pretty sharp difference between these two. Even though they are the same color on the nails, you can see the regular polish one is a lot lighter and a lot softer, and the stamping polish definitely has a more pronounced color, and it also has sharper lines. So over specialty finishes, it did seem that stamping polish was the way to go, but I wanted to try another experiment too over a different type of specialty finish just to see how that went. So we moved on, and now we're going to be stamping over a shimmery polish. So this time I'm going to do purple. We've got Essie Cyber Society on the left. We've got What's Up Nails First Violet as my stamping polish on the right, and I was actually pretty impressed at how close these two colors are. I will say all of my dupes are very close to each other, but some of them just have very slight differences. I think if you're using a regular polish and then having an accent with something stamped, these types of colors would go really well together, but looking at them directly side by side, you might see some smaller differences. But anyway, I did stamp this over my glittery shimmer polish, and you can see the regular polish, it kind of just fades into the background a little bit. Now, I will say part of that is user error because I did pick a pretty busy stamp, and I just don't think that necessarily works over a busy nail polish because you kind of lose what the pattern is. But if I absolutely had to, I would still pick the stamping polish over it just because there we can see a lot sharper of a line, and you can almost see in the regular nail polish some of that glittery shimmer comes through where the stamping color is, so it almost turns it into this like pinky color with that gold kind of coming through a little bit underneath it, whereas on the stamping polish side you can see it is very solidly purple and it is sharper lines, although still it's just not a great polish to stamp over. Now, another type of nail polish that I love to stamp with that doesn't have to be a stamping polish is going to be a metallic polish. So I'm going to show you the difference between a regular metallic and a stamping metallic. We've got Orly Love at Frost Sight on the left, and then we've got What's Up Nails Silver Agent on the right as my stamping polish. And there is another slight difference here. The Orly polish is a little bit deeper and darker, but once I stamped them, they actually did look like the same color. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But yeah, when you're working with a metallic polish, most of the time they are going to be opaque enough that they'll work really well for stamping. I don't think I've really come across any metallic polishes that I couldn't successfully use for stamping. Honestly, even though the Orly polish is a little bit darker on the nails, I think that these two side by side look almost exactly the same. So when it comes to metallic polish, it's going to work really well for stamping whether or not it's a stamping polish. So you'll always see in my swatch and review videos, I'm always like, this metallic is great for stamping, because I think almost all of them are. I was also very curious to try a linear hollow as a stamping polish because I have this one from What's Up Nails called Welcome to Hollowood, and it is a stamping polish, and I've never actually tried to stamp with just a regular hollow nail polish before. So I took out my most holographic, which is Color Club Harp on it, and you can see side by side these colors look almost the same. Maybe the Color Club one is slightly more holographic, but for the most part they both have very similar features, and I stamped it over black because I think a specialty type of polish works best over a dark color, and in this case I was absolutely stunned. I think that not only did the Color Club one work really well, but I think it actually ended up looking a little bit better than the stamping polish, and I'm not quite sure if that's just because the Color Club polish is more holographic. It looks, when I'm really studying them closely, like the Color Club shade has just a finer type of pigment in it, so you can see that sparkle is just a little bit more linear than the What's Up Nails one. So I'm wondering if my more shimmery kind of linear hollow polishes where the grit is just a little bit finer are gonna be the best for stamping. So definitely something to look look into, but overall, incredibly impressed with how this stamped, especially considering the Color Club is not particularly opaque. I do need 2 coats for coverage. So now let's move on to what I think is the most exciting part of this experiment, which is stamping with white and stamping with black. So I'm going to start with white, and I will say when it comes to black and white stamping, I 100% of the time will choose the stamping polish because 1, I figured white would never be opaque enough to actually work over a darker color, and 2, I just want to make sure again that the lines are nice and crisp and that the polish is opaque enough to really work. So I'm using OPI Alpine Snow, which is my favorite white, as my regular polish, and then I'm going to use the Picture Polish Stamped White as my stamping polish, and I'm stamping over black. So I was 100% convinced that the OPI was not going to show up well, if at all, but oh my gosh, I am absolutely stunned at how well this worked, especially considering even Alpine Snow is not a 1 coater on me. I do still need 2 coats for full coverage, but it worked so well for stamping. Again, this is one of those situations where side by side, I don't think I would even be able to tell which of these is the stamping polish and which is the regular nail polish. So I am incredibly impressed. I will definitely be using Alpine Snow again for stamping because that worked incredibly well. And then of course we had to stamp some black just to see what that difference was, and I did have higher hopes for this. So for my regular nail polish, I am using Total Eclipse from KB Shimmer, which is a 1 coat black, and I've always figured that a 1 coat black nail polish will probably also work really well as a stamping polish, but again, I always reach for my stamping polish. In this case, I'm using another one from What's Up Nails. This is Neither Noir, so I'm going to stamp over white just so you can see that stark contrast going on, and again, I was really impressed. I wasn't as surprised in this case because, of course, when you're working with a 1 coat nail polish, it should apply really well, but again, I don't think I would really be able to tell the difference between a regular black nail polish and a stamping black nail polish, at least over a lighter color. I think it worked really well, but I have a feeling it would work well over any color. The only difference that I'm seeing is, and I think this was really user error, but on the regular polish side, there was an area that was just a little bit less opaque in the middle there, but I think that's just because I was scraping too hard. So yeah, overall, very impressed with a regular 1 coat black nail polish. So I have to say, the results of this test were pretty surprising to me. I've always been a huge fan of stamping polishes, and even though I don't always use them when I am stamping, whenever people ask me, I always say you should use stamping polish. It is 100% the best. It's always going to be better. And I feel like this really taught me that that's not always the case, because a lot of these did hold up really well, and I really couldn't tell a difference between some of them. But overall, I did want to talk about my key takeaways from this and what I prefer in what instances. So key takeaway number 1, when you're working with a lighter base color, I think it's totally fine to work with pretty much any nail polish. Even nail polishes that aren't necessarily the most opaque should perform pretty well over a very light base. So in that case, the world is really your oyster and you can probably use anything in your collection. Takeaway number 2, I do think that the difference is negligible for a lot of the polishes I showed today, but when you're working with a lighter stamping color and a darker base, I will say overall, I think that stamping polishes did perform better, with the exception of the white, which we'll talk about in a minute. So in that case, if you are working with a darker base and a lighter color, I do think that stamping polish is generally the way to go. Takeaway number 3 is, surprisingly, shimmery nail polishes or linear hollows do perform well as stamping polishes, but when you're working with them as a base color with a stamp over it, I do think that stamping polishes work a little bit better just because in general you're getting a sharper line and a brighter color, and I think it stands out a little bit more against that exciting background. And then my final takeaway is the biggest surprise of the day, which is black and white. I really did not expect, especially my white nail polish, Alpine Snow, to perform as well as a stamping polish. Even though Alpine Snow is my most opaque white polish, I really just didn't expect it to look so good. And usually when it comes to black and white nail polishes, those are the ones that I say I will never use a non-stamping polish because black and white always look the best in stamping versions. But I really found that to not be the case. I think both my regular polishes really held up well against the regular stamping polishes. So I feel like in the future, I can definitely just use a regular black and white polish and it'll work well. So yeah, final thoughts. While I do love stamping nail polishes, and I'll always probably reach for them first just because that's what they're made for, a lot of regular nail polishes polishes will work incredibly well for this, and some might even work a little bit better. I will say overall, I think the best nail polish to stamp with is going to be one that is very opaque, so you can really see the color even if it's in a very thin coat, because when you're working with a nail stamp, it is going to give you an incredibly thin layer of nail polish, so you do want to make sure that you're working with something that's very pigmented. But I really had a lot of fun doing this, and I do want to do a stamping compilation video where I exclusively use non-stamping polishes, so I am going to be doing that soon. Definitely stay tuned. If there's a specific brand or polish within a brand that you want to see me use for that video, definitely let me know in the comments and I can include that. But yeah, I want to hear your thoughts. What do you think of this test? Which polish do you think performed the absolute best out of all of the stamping polishes and non-stamping polishes? And is there a polish in your collection that's not specifically made for stamping that you think is absolutely perfect for it? Leave it all in the comments. We can chat about it. If you enjoy my videos, please give this one a thumbs up. It helps me and it lets me know I'm doing a good job. And if you're not already subscribed to my channel, please consider subscribing. I put out new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And of course, a huge shout out to my supporters on Patreon, my Royal Astronomer Amanda M, as well as my Cosmic Admirals, Rocket Man's daughter, Paula, Ken, Rosie, and Courtney. I really appreciate your support, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye. Today's fun fact question comes from Patreon supporter Megan D, and Megan D wants to know, do you have a favorite nail polish collection theme other than space, of course? Ooh, that's actually a tough one because I will say in general, I'm very much a theme person. I really love a color story that makes sense across an entire nail polish collection, and I really appreciate when brands put in the extra effort to make a theme work, not only for what the theme is, but also for nail polishes that you could wear individually. And obviously, I'm very partial to space themes because that's what I love. I mean, it's hard because I feel like one of my favorite themes is rainbow theme. I love when a brand comes out with a rainbow of colors in the same finish. I always love that. Ooh, what else? Big fan of desert themed things. I like when brands do like the desert vibes, especially with some of those pops of colors that you see. I'm also obviously very partial to Halloween themed collections because that is my favorite holiday, but kind of like adjacent to space and Halloween together would be like a more witchy, magic-y kind of theme. I always really appreciate as well. But yeah, that actually has me curious. What is your favorite type of theme for a nail polish collection? Leave it in the comments. We can chat about it, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye.